Hello everyone, I'm Sarah. It's day 7 of term back time, which means I've finished one whole week of this healthy eating challenge. And maybe you have too, if you're following along with me. If you are, let me know in the comments below. And well done. I feel like this podcast should start perhaps with a fanfare or confetti for getting to 1 week of sticking to the most healthy way of eating possible. And maybe you're already noticing huge changes, not just in your weight and size, but in how you actually feel. I certainly don't have nausea at all anymore. I also used to have a dull ache on the right side of my back, which sometimes ramped up, and I haven't had that all week. I'm not sure if it was the kidneys or the liver, it was in that area, but I guess this diet is sorting out both. I didn't have any obvious inflammation in my limbs, but maybe you did. And maybe that started to ease for you. I do have a confession to make at this point, 1 week in case you thought I wasn't being realistic and I'm some sort of paragon of virtue. I have slipped up a couple of times, and always to the same thing. 3 times last week at around 10 p.m, I just wanted chocolate. And I went to the fridge, cruising, and the only chocolate in there was one of these. And I ate one, reasoning that it wasn't actually that much and it wouldn't make a difference. And weight loss wise, it didn't seem to, but maybe it did. But it wouldn't have happened at all if I'd prepared some Snickers dates or pecan bites or some Snickers ice cream, which is delicious, by the way. I would have happily had one of those instead and then been able to balance it. So I was sabotaging myself. In the end, I got a handle on myself and I stopped it. But then at the end of the week, I was at the feed store and someone handed me a free piece of chocolate. And it was only a little piece, and I was already holding it. Well, I took a bite. And then as I walked outside, and I suddenly felt quite sick. I didn't want it. I threw it in the rubbish. So something inside of me was now making sure I stayed in line. I did finally get around to making some sweet treats for the fridge, but then ran out of time to coat them in chocolate. So I can attest that the Snickers dates with just the peanuts and the peanut butter inside are quite lovely. And the pecan, date and cinnamon roll doesn't even really need chocolate, I don't think, and it tastes like UK mince pies. Just make sure you balance them and only have a small amount. The other thing that you might be confused about at this point is alcohol. Now, how does that fit in this diet plan? Well, you can count 1 normal glass of wine and 1 small beer as 1 carb. And like with any other carbs, you just have to balance it with fat and protein. And if you are going to drink, you'd be so much better to make it red wine, because it's packed with polyphenols and antioxidants, which fight inflammation rather than create it. I used to have a clinic in Spain, and I suggested this diet to most of my clients who were all suffering from all sorts of different ailments. And I used to walk through the town square in the evening as I was heading home and saw them all sitting there with a glass of wine, 3 almonds and an ounce of cheese. And I was talking to one of the barmen and mentioned it, and he said, "Oh, now I understand. I had no idea why everyone was suddenly doing the same thing." So while you can accommodate alcohol, I think you're understanding by now that it's not ideal. You're far better off with a portion of kale rather than a glass of red wine. I know, no one's ever going to take me out anymore, are they? But since I was 18, I've only ever drunk water when I went out anyway. Sometimes I do long for the Afghan days, bizarrely, where we were all drinking up to 12 litres or 24 pints of water a day and still needed more. It was so hot. It was just like leaking out of us. And because of that, I think I was the skinniest I'd ever been since I was a teenager. And I was 45. All the men with me commented that they felt so healthy despite the obvious challenges, because they were simply drinking bottles and bottles of water and imbibing no alcohol. The diet suggests you drink at least 8 tall glasses of water, so 8 ounces a glass every day. And sometimes it's difficult to keep track of that. So I got myself this secret weapon, my bottle of shame, a huge bottle with the times of the day printed down the side showing you how much water you need to have drunk by that time. This is 64 fluid ounces, so 8 glasses of water. There's no greater wake-up call than getting to 6 o'clock at night and realising that you've only drunk what you should have drunk by 9 a.m. Then you have to sit there for about an hour just trying to get it down to try and catch up. This podcast isn't sponsored by anyone, so I'm not promoting any particular brand, and there are loads of different cheap ones on Amazon. And if you're getting fed up with the taste of water, just put some lemon or lime halves in it to give it some taste, and fill it with pure sparkling water, much more palatable. Did you know that water alone can make you shed fat? Increasing your water intake increases lipolysis, which is the process by which the body burns fat for energy. Also, as you're losing weight, your body is naturally breaking down fat, creating waste, which needs to be flushed out of the body. My body has flushed out 2 ounces short of 4 pounds of fat this week, 1 3/4 kilos. Yours too, maybe more. The body also needs water for essential services. Did you know that glycogen, which is the storable form of glucose, stores 3 times its weight in water at the same time? So for every gram of glycogen stored in the body, it holds 3 grams of water. And this maybe is another explanation for water retention. You have glycogen in the stores because you've eaten more carbohydrates than you need at that time. Unless you're a professional athlete, about to run a marathon or cycle the Tour de France, you don't need those stores if you're going to eat again in 3 hours' time. So if you store less glycogen, you carry less water. And glycogen is changed back into glucose when your body needs it. So if you supply the glucose regularly, when the body is calling for it, no need for that process. There's so much about the body that we might not all know, and we really are just scratching the surface of it here. But it makes you think, doesn't it? And hopefully spurs you on. So just before we end today, given it is 1 week completed, I just wanted to give you a status report on my body. So I've lost 2 inches off my bust in a week, 2 inches off my waist, and almost 2 inches off my hips. My thigh measurements are coming in at about 1 inch less. My calves the same, and the weight is just beginning to drop off my upper arms, my bingo wings. I've done pretty much no exercise bar 1 45-minute fast walking session and general moving around, and I do walk with the dogs for an hour a day, but they're all getting quite old now, so it's a bit more like a slow march. Not much good for exercise. I must admit, I'm quite thrilled with the results, and if you're following along, I hope you are too. I'm so excited to see what the next week brings, but also understanding that it is rubbish that postmenopausal women can't lose weight. We absolutely can. See you tomorrow.